Welcome to part 2 of our 4-part series. In the first video, I compared Gyraline to traditional DIY alignment tools and got some pretty interesting results. If you haven't seen it yet, I'll link it below so you can see how Gyraline measures up against my other tools. So in case you guys are wondering how I got those results, I'm going to show you exactly how I got them. I'll also walk you through how I used each alignment tool, toe plates with its angle finder, the string alignment setup that I have, and Gyraline. And along the way, I'll share some quirks and helpful tips to make sure you get the most accurate readings possible. Before we begin, please like and subscribe if you like these videos. It really helps us reach out more viewers like you. So what is alignment? Alignment is making sure your car's wheels are standing straight and pointing the right way. Your car has 4 wheels, and if they are not lined up correctly, it's like walking with a pigeon-toed, bow-legged feet. Each car manufacturer will have alignment settings that are best for your car. The proper wheel alignment is important for safety and also save you money because it will increase the life of your tires and your fuel efficiency. There are 3 main types of measurement in wheel alignment, and they are usually measured in degrees. Those are camber, toe, and caster. So camber is the vertical angle of your wheels, how much the top of the wheel is in or out. It affects how your car corners. If the top of the tire leans inward towards the center of your car, it is negative camber. If it leans outward, it is positive camber. Positive camber can make your car feel more unstable and can make your tires wear unevenly on the outer edges. So negative camber improves cornering grip because it keeps more of the tire in contact with the road when turning. But too much negative camber can make the inside of your tire wear out faster. And of course, too much will also make you lose tire contact. So here's an example of positive camber. So here is an example of negative camber. And here is the example of when your car has both positive and negative camber. So toe is about the horizontal angle of your wheels, if they are pointing in or out. It's about how your car's wheels are angled in relation to the other wheels on the same axle. It mainly affects your car's stability and how responsive it is to steering. If your wheels are pointing inward, it's toe in, or positive degrees. If they are pointing outward, it's toed out, which is measured as negative degrees. If your wheels are slightly toed in, the car will be more stable at higher speeds, but too much can cause uneven tire wear in the inside of the tire. If your wheels are toed out, it will be less stable and will also cause uneven tire wear, mostly on the outside of the tire. So here's an example. This is the front axle and that is the rear axle. So here is an example of when the front axle is toed in, which is positive. You simply add this degree and this degree together. And here's an example of toed out in the rear axle, which is negative. You simply add the 2 degrees together. Here's an example of when your car has both toe in and toed out. Total toe is a combined toe angle of both wheels on an axle. You measure each toe individually for each wheel, then you add them up. In the front axle over here, you'll see that the left wheel is toed out, but the right wheel is toed in. The left is 0.5 degrees toed out, which is negative, but the right wheel is 0.3 degrees toed in, which is positive. When one wheel side is negative and the other is positive, the greater angle will determine if it is toed in or toed out. So in this example, you'll want to take the difference between 0.5 and 0.3, which is 0.2 degrees toed out. Now let's reverse this. This time, the left wheel is toed out 0.3 degrees and the right wheel is toed in 0.5 degrees. The greater angle this time is the right wheel, which is towed in. So total tow in the front axle will be 0.2 degrees tow in. So how about caster? My car does not have adjustable casters yet, so I won't be covering this today. Before we start checking the alignment, we need to prep the car first to get the most accurate results. So first thing is make sure you park your car on a pretty level surface. Ideal is 0, but for me, this is like my usual garage, so this only has like 0.2 degrees slope and then 0.4. That should be good enough. The second thing that we need to do is to make sure that the suspension of the car is settled. When you're driving around with there's bumps and stuff, like even just me going on to my driveway, I have a pretty good slope, so the suspension might not be settled. To do that, you just gotta let your car park there just for a little bit, and then we can just roll the car back and forth, and that should settle the car. So before I start rolling the car, I'm gonna make sure to chuck it so I don't accidentally roll it to my garage door. So I'm just gonna put this 2x4 and just put it behind the wheel. So the second thing to do is put my key in the ignition, since this is an automatic. Put it on, have to press my brake so I can put it on neutral. And then I'm gonna try to keep my steering wheel straight already, so it won't be binded later on when I start trying to make sure the steering wheel is straight. And then I also need to release the parking brake. And then now I can start pushing. And then roll back. And then probably just do it like a couple times and it should be good. Alright, now we're good. Go ahead and put it back in park and put our parking brakes back on. So now that should settle the suspension. All right, next thing is you got to make sure that you normalize the car load. Ideally, since you are a driver and you're always weighing down the driver's side, you should put in weights where you sit, but it's pretty minimal. If you do like carry a lot of load all the time, then you might as well put the load in, because that would be your normal state when you're driving. You can also make sure your fuel tank is full. If you're always running on full, you don't want to be on empty all the time anyway. So next, you would want to make sure that your tires are inflated properly. For normal cars with their stock wheels, usually the recommended tire pressure is in between your door jambs on the driver's side. So for my car, it would be right here. This actually shows the size of the tires. Also, with the stock tires, a 215 60/16, it shows that I need 30 psi all the way around. And if I do move up to like a 225 55/16, I need 32 psi all the way around. But for my car, I have aftermarket wheels and tires, and I have it set at 34 psi. So now I'm gonna go around. I have my tire pressure gauge and double check my tire pressure. So just remove the valve stem cap and take your reading. Yep, I'm exactly at 34 psi. And I'm gonna go ahead and do that all the way around. Alright, and that is good also. So our tire pressures are good. We don't need to inflate or deflate any of the tires. So lastly, right before we start checking, double check that your steering wheel is straight, nothing moved. We won't need to harness the steering wheel down since we're only checking. We're not going to be adjusting the toe or any of the alignments right now. Once you start adjusting it, that will actually start moving the steering wheel around. So you would need to get it harnessed down so it doesn't move. But since we're just checking, we won't need to do that. Just gotta make sure that it's straight and we're good to go. On the next video, I will be changing the alignment and I will show you how to harness the steering wheel down. So make sure you stick around for that. The first tool we're going to be using are these toe plates. We have the tape measures to measure toe. And this tape measure measures in inches. With the results in inches, we can take that and convert it to degrees. So this toe plate also have an angle finder, and this is what we'll be able to use to check the camber on the wheels. And the angle finder measures in degrees. So the toe plates can also measure caster, but we're not gonna get into that right now. Stay tuned for the later series and we will, but right now we're not gonna get into that. So toe plates are great because they are pretty easy to set up. They are pretty foolproof. You can visually see your results, but the downside of it is you can only see total toe per axle, only the front total toe or the rear total toe. So you also won't have a reference between the two. So you don't know if you can set it to 0, but it could be 0 to the right or 0 to the left on both sides. You won't know if all 4 is pointing straight. So this is ideal if you change just like one side of your suspension parts and you know that one side is good and the other side just needs to be adjusted back to where it was or it needs to be, then this would be perfect. So now we're going to use the toe plates to actually find the total toe for the front and the rear of the car. We have 2 plates. We're going to lean it on both sides of the wheel and we're just going to see if it's towing in or towing out. Use this one for this side. It has this notch right here and you just line it up to the center of your wheel, where I'm going to use the center cap hole as a reference. And then I'm going to go and put this on the other side. As you can see here, this one has a bigger slot. This one is the one that will receive the other end of the tape measure. And let's go back to the other side. So as you saw on the other plate, it has the bigger slit. This one only has like a small slit on it. So this will be the one where the tape measure is going to be at. So we're just going to go ahead and feed this tape to the other side. And then we just put this tape right there. Do the same thing on the other side. Lock it down. Let it rest. Then let's go to the other side. Grab the other end of the tape measure and put it right in the slot. Double check, still in the center. Make sure it's leaning properly to the wheel. Go back to this side. Make sure it's centered and leaning properly. And then now we're just gonna pull on both sides. Give it an equal amount of pressure. Just make sure they're taut, and you can see where the mark is on both sides. So on this one, they are both at 74.5. So that means they're equal on both sides, which means 0 toe. With this toe plate, it comes with a conversion factor. It'll turn your inches to degrees. Since we have 0, we're just gonna have 0 degrees. So if it's gonna be something else, then we'll go see what it will be. So now we have the total toe for the front, and we can go to the back. For the other side. We have everything set up and ready to read the measurements. All right, so this is like, so the back is 72 and 7/8, and then the front is about a 32nd or a 32nd and a half difference. I would say a 32nd and a half. So if we look at this chart, we have a 32nd, and this would be a 16th. So a 32nd and a half, I would say in between this. So I would just call it 0.12. So now we have our results, and it'll be a good idea to just go ahead and write it down. For the front, I have 0 degrees, and then for the rear, since the front of the wheel is shorter than the rear in measurements, then that means we have a toe in, which is a positive value. So that means we have 0.12 degrees toe in the rear. So now we're going to go ahead and measure the camber. This toe plate has a window right here, so you can have this facing this way or outside, whichever way is easier for you. It also has these rods, so you can lean it against the rim. So make sure you adjust it specifically to where you're gonna measure on your rim. So you can do that by loosening this and then moving this up and down. Make sure they align. And then you tighten it down. So you can go either the rim that's sticking out or inside of the rim. But with these wheels, you can actually see that this part is elevated and this part isn't. And then it's elevated and it's not. So that could actually ruin your measurement. So we're gonna go ahead and use the outer rim. So now we're ready to take our measurement. You would want your plate to be as vertical as you can because it could affect your result. So what I like to do is just hold it in the very top and just let it hang. That should be pretty vertical. And then just put it next to the rim. Make sure you try to get the center of it. So just use that as a reference. And it's also the highest point. Go ahead and put that. Alright. So it says 3.0. So if you're sideways, you can see it could change. Like this is not completely perpendicular, it'll change the value. Also, if you're not exactly up and down, it'll change the value. So we got 3.0 on this wheel. Now we're just gonna go around and do the same thing to all of them. So the string alignment can measure total toe and individual toe. We're gonna create a rectangular box all the way around the car. So the car will be sitting in the middle. We're gonna use the string as a reference point to measure where the wheel is compared to a perfect box around the car. And we're gonna use the string to measure the toe for the front and the rear. So now we're gonna use the string alignment method to check the alignment on the car. String alignment, it's pretty cheap. You can grab all your supplies. You have your jack stands. You need to have a pretty accurate ruler, some strings, and for me, I'm using these aluminum angles. I just have a lot of these laying around. As you can see, if you guys haven't watched my tire rack video, I made tire rack with these. So you need to have a ruler and you can get to how accurate you want to be with this. So this ruler actually measures even finer than a 64. So this can be very accurate as long as I have everything set up right. So I made sure to cut these two aluminum angles at the exact same length. And then I marked the center point on both of them, and then I made the slits evenly on both sides, and each gap is like gapped every 2 inches. This one actually has 4 slits that I made in case I have to align cars that are fairly narrow to a pretty wide. So these will help me create a rectangle all the way around the car and hold the strings in place. I'll be putting one in the front of the car and then one in the back of the car to hold the strings. And they're going to be supported by the jack stands. So when you're setting this up, it's more ideal to be as close as you can to the wheel without touching the wheel. Since the farther you are, the more error you can have. With the string, I actually made 2 strings and I have knots on both ends, and these 2 strings are exactly the same length. So now that we have 2 of the exact same length bars, and then as perfect as possible that I can get the strings to be even, we're gonna have a fairly accurate rectangle all the way around the car. I'm gonna go ahead and set that up and you can see how I do it. First, we're gonna put the jack stands in front of the car. I want it kind of wide. Then we're gonna take the aluminum angle and just put it on top. Since my aluminum angle is kind of flat, I actually like putting my jack stands a little diagonal so it doesn't really move around. And then my center point, I just line it up with the center point that I put on my bumper. This was mainly just taking a reference from the logo, which is usually the center point of a car. And then it can be our rough estimate of where the middle is. So when we start lining up the strings, we don't have to adjust as much. Now that we have this set up in the front, we're gonna go ahead and just do the same thing in the back, and then we'll move on from there. Put my jack stands around there. Then put aluminum angles on top. So I have my center point and I have a mark right here. Line it up. Now you can only go like that. Now that the back is set up, we can go ahead and use our string and go ahead and just place it in the bar for now. And just attach it to the back. For my car, I'm using this second one from the middle. Yeah. The second slot from the middle is 74 inches wide total. And now let's put this on the other side. Now that you see how the string is going to go, we actually want this to be right in the middle of the wheel. This will give us the widest part to measure, which will give us more accurate results. And it will help us not worry about any of the camber or anything. And to do that, we'll just measure it with our tape measure, get to around the middle. That's about 12.5 inches. So we'll go ahead and raise the bars to 12.5 inches. So right now we are around 12 inches. So probably give it 2 clicks. So 2 clicks on this side, and then I'm gonna go ahead and do that to this side. Okay. So that gives us like 12.5. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do that at the rear and make it the same height. So now that we have the jacks raised to the proper level, so you can see the strings are drooping, which we don't want at all because that will definitely change the measurement because of the camber. This would be higher than the rear, which will definitely change our results. So now we're just gonna have to try to make it taut. And since these strings are equal length on both sides, I'm just gonna change how they're anchored on the bar on both sides and make sure they're anchored the same way. And that should make it pretty taut. And then we can just pull the bar away from the car. All right, so now let's just make sure that our bar is perpendicular to how straight the car is. You can do that by using a tape measure, just finding a spot in the car to make sure it's even. And 3/4. Now that we made sure that the bar is at the perfect height, the string is taut, and the bar is perpendicular from the car, now we have to make sure that the string is equal on both sides, the right and the left in the front. And then we're also going to do that in the rear, make sure that the rear right and rear left is going to be equal. And that would make sure that it is a perfect box around the car. We're just going to measure it. The center of the wheel would be the most ideal. Since there's a big void, I'm just going to use the top for now and get as close as I can on both sides. And what I actually do to make sure that I'm as close as possible is I'm pretty much starting to do the toe reading, taking the measurement of the front and the rear of the wheel, and then taking the median of that number and making sure that they equal each other. So that's just an extra step that you can do to make sure you're more accurate. So that's what I'm going to start doing. Just to be able to read it fairly quickly, I'm just going to use the millimeters. So this says it's about 7 mil. So I'm going to go on the other side and see where it is at. Here is actually pretty close to 7 mil also. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rear. This is 7.6. Wow, this one's completely off. This one is 8.7. I'm just gonna push it a little closer. Let the string settle. Okay, this is 8.3 right now. See the other side. This is like 8.2. So this is actually what's going to take you a while, just to make sure that your whole setup is as close to perfect as you can to get the most accurate reading. I'm at 8.2. Try on the other side again. Alright, so we got 8.2 also. So now I'm gonna go back to the front, and I'm actually going to do a quick toe reading just to get that median number so I can adjust it even better. Okay, so that's 1.2. That's like 1.1. So the median would be 1.15. Check the other side. So this one is 1.4 and that one's 1.3. So the median is 1.35. So we were actually pretty close before, and as you can see, it actually moved since we changed the rear. So we're gonna have to move it back that way. So this 0.35, the other says 1.15. So we'll just need to move it by 0.1. No, we're good. I'm just gonna. So moved it by 1.2. Let's go to the other side. 1.3. 1.2. Okay, so now we're fairly centered. And then now I'm gonna check the rear. 2.6. 2.6.5. So we set up the whole rectangle around the car as best that we can. We are gonna go ahead and start taking the toe measurements using the inch side to be more precise on the measuring. Since the lines are very fine, I'm actually gonna start using my phone, and I'm just gonna go ahead and place it where it is. And I'm actually going to take a picture so I can zoom in and have something that won't be moving around and mark that down. So I got my measurement in the front of the wheel, and then now I'm going to take the rear of the wheel. All right. So now that we have our measurements, we're going to take the distance of the front of this wheel and subtract it with the rear of this wheel, and that is going to be our value. So if it is a negative value, it's actually towing out, and if it's a positive value, it's going to be towing in. Once we get the individual toe on this side, we're going to go ahead and go to the other side and get the toe readings from that, and whatever toe reading we get from that side, we're going to add it with this side. So if it's positive, the total toe would be towed in, and if it's negative, the total toe will be towed out. And you can go back and take those measurements and double check it with our toe plate measurements, and we can see that they should be about the same. So now we're just going to go ahead and do that for all of the wheels, get all our measurements. Just go ahead and just take the picture, do it all at once, and then we'll get back to you with the results. Also, when looking at your calculations, make sure you always refer at the same spot of the string. So like if you're measuring from the inside part of the string, then always do that with all your wheels to keep it consistent. So now that we have all the values in inches, I'm actually going to use this table to convert from inches to degrees. I'm going to put the link of where I found this table from, but the reason why we would want to convert to degrees is because if you ever look at alignment specs, they're usually in degrees. And if you keep your values in inches, depending on what size wheel you're running, the values will actually change. So if we convert it to degrees, that would take that factor out. So to use this table, it actually says, the rim or tire diameter, but to be more accurate, you actually don't want to use the exact number that your wheel size is. So let's say my wheel size is 18 inch, right? But if you actually take the measurement from the front and the back of my wheel where I took my measurements from is actually 19 inches long, not 18. So to be more accurate, use the 19-inch row on this table. So by using that, these will be our values in degrees. All right, now we're going to check our alignment with Gyraline. So first, just put your phone in. Make sure you have the right knob. They give you different adjustment knobs for different size phones. This one's the ideal one for my phone. Okay, so now this nice and snug, not too tight. Now we have the app pulled up. Just let it calibrate real quick. Put it down for 2 to 5 seconds. We're going to do the camber first. It says uncalibrated. Tap here to calibrate your device. So we're going to go ahead and calibrate it first. Okay. Just lean the platform, the phone holder, flat against the rim and try to level the line. And save the angle. Rotate our phone. Do the same thing. So you're trying to make sure this is flat. You don't push it all the way against your wheel. Just try to keep it pretty parallel to the face of your wheel. Okay, so now we got it calibrated. We can go ahead and start with the front right. All right, so negative 3.1. We're going to try to keep it symmetrical, so we're going to do it to the front part of the wheel. 2.9. 2.1. Tap on the rear right. All right, negative 2.0. So that is pretty close to the results we got from the angle finder. So go ahead and screenshot it. All right, now we can go and do a toe reading. We're going to press the align toe. We're just going to do the thrust align mode. And of course, we would like to be as precise as possible, which is 0.05 in this case. They have a 0.01, but they're still working on it. So this is the best thing we're going to get right now. Go ahead and lay it flat. Let it recalibrate. 2 to 5 seconds. All right, that should be good. Yeah, there's two knobs to just press it against the lip of the wheel. Try to get the bubble right in the center. And then press the wheel that you're on. And we can go on the other side. Try to be as smooth as possible. Now we have the front. Now let's go to the back. All right, now we got the total toe for front and rear. Now we want to know the thrust angle. So just press the rear wheel again. And then this time we're going to go to the front side. All right, so that is our value. Let's go ahead and save that. So if you actually end up flipping it around, when in case you accidentally do it, let's restart. All right, here is an example of what will happen. There's that. And let's say I just keep it the same way, holding it the same way without flipping over. The front's going to be in the rear of the car. Then I'm on this side now. It'll actually give you a warning saying, hey, you forgot to rotate the phone. So pretty much have to redo it. If you mess up on anything, the best thing to do is just restart, because the sensors are pretty much all out of whack now. So just go ahead and let it recalibrate and then do it again. So this this phone holder, actually, the way it's designed, you can actually just put it against your lip like this. So it makes it easier to hold the phone up. You have something to lean up against. I was just showing the other way in case you don't have a lip. Most stock cars don't have lips. Or some cars don't have lips. And, this Tesla, the lip is actually, or with this wheel, the lip is actually long enough. But remember how I said before that it has, this part actually is elevated to this. So I was kind of worried that it would touch, but it actually doesn't touch. So I could have just used the lip if I wanted to. But that is how you do the thrust align. And then now we're going to do the body align. Okay. Now we're going to do the body align mode. With body align mode, it'll actually give you the individual toe for each wheel. So it does that by actually using a reference point on the body of your car. You'll just take this first reference point, take the reference point on the other side, it'll find your center point, and then it'll use that center point to measure the toe for each individual wheel. So to get started, we can just go ahead and put it down, go ahead and let it recalibrate. And this actually has the surface profiles that would help be more accurate. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. It actually wants you to have a score of over 99.5. With this one, you have to put one side as an anchor point, and then you sweep the other side. So let's begin on the right side base. We're going to go ahead and use this as the right side as our anchor point. and sweep the left side. There you go. And we got 99.8. So that's good. Let's go ahead and do on the other side. Do the same thing. Right. Now we're gonna do our 99.9. So go ahead and save that. Reference points. So I'm just going to use this window as our reference point. You can use the back window, the front window, even this side, pretty much anywhere where you can just make sure that you can be at a symmetrical point on the other side. Go ahead, get it right there. So these bars are actually a lot more trickier than the thrust mode because you actually have to recalibrate it after like 20 seconds. So now I'm back. Hit that again, and it's green. I can go ahead and go to a wheel. So remember, be smooth because it can throw off your reading. But you have to be quick at the same time because look at that. I ran out of time, now it's red, and I don't know if I can trust the value. So I have to recalibrate it and go back to the reference point and just do it again. All right, made it this time. Now we go back to the reference point on this side. Right, to the rear. Right. Go to the front. All right. So this is a perfect example of always doing multiple readings. Pretty sure I did the best I could to do that. So I'm pretty sure I did the whole procedure correctly, but looking at this value, that does not look right. It is giving me a negative 1.35 degree, which I already know from my string alignments that that's not the correct value. So I'm going to go ahead and take another reading real quick and see what we'll get. But go ahead, get our reference point. Oh man, getting a leg workout. All right, so look at that. This is definitely a lot better than the previous reading. So go ahead and save that. Okay, So we have our individual toe readings. That is how you take your alignment measurements. Stay tuned for my next episode where I walk you through how to actually make adjustments after taking measurements. Let me know if you all have any questions in the comments below. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe and stay tuned for the future episodes.